I hope you understand the difference between a quote and an estimate. And you seriously need to Google that shit if you don't. But a quote is a fixed price. An estimate is a kind of ballpark, stand back from the dartboard and throw it. It's got no reliability to it. It's an estimate. How old are you going to be before you start to experience life like you want it? I want to tell you right now, whether you like it or not, there is a better way to do business. Hi everyone, welcome to the Business for Builders podcast. Welcome to you if you're in YouTube land. My name's Max. I'm the CEO of Smith & Sons. Do all that sort of stuff, like and subscribe and leave us a comment, all that sort of stuff. If you want to talk to me via email, you can, max@businessforbuilders.ca. Just would love any kind of interaction, whatever you've got. Whether you've got some questions about how to develop high-performance businesses, or anything around operations or sales or estimating or anything that you got that you might have a little query about, I'd love to hear from you. Okay, so on this episode, look, as you know, I mean, we're in an operational business here. We have introduced 11 general contractors to the Smith & Sons organization worldwide. We're over 100 franchises, all general contractors doing renovations mostly, some custom homes. And today I'm just going to cover off as quickly as I can that I would say is going to bring value to, some of you guys and gals. And I'm assuming that I'm chatting mostly to general contractors, but there's takeaways. If you're just a subcontractor, there's definitely takeaways that you'll be able to use off the back of this quick discussion. So what I'm going to talk about today is how to quote a $500,000 reno. Now, this has all come about from one of my GCs, and we've had an interesting it's probably almost a week from the inquiry first meeting through to today. And, I just felt that, I want to cover off some of that information from that experience that might be able to help you guys and gals in your operation, in what you're doing there in your local community. So really, obviously, it's a fairly broad subject. When I say how, I'm going to cover information, or I'm going to cover subjects to do with how to quote a $500,000 job. For the sake of time, I'm going to probably just talk about four main pillars that I see in that. And of course, there's things that need to be added onto or built on top of in a lot more micro than what I'm going to share with you in the next 15, 20, 25 minutes. So if you're in between meetings at the moment, you've got a 20, 25 minute drive, I will try and keep it to 25 minutes. But look, it's always good to jump back in your truck and carry on from where you left off. So, look, I think everything that we do, we talked about having, a business is run by systems, and good talent utilizes those systems to obviously run or operate the business. So really what we're talking about here is an overall process, probably in the sales and quoting side of things. I'm not going to talk about the construction side. But I think focusing on how do we win that job, because really what my focus has been in this little experience that we've had over the last week with one of my GCs, it really does highlight the reasons behind why we do what we do. And out of that, I was able to sort of compartmentalize a few things and the reasons why we do what we do. So look, I think in a nutshell, to preface this episode information, it's, we have a thing called a quantity takeoff service. We call it a QTS. It's not a big deal, but when we've got clients that are approaching us to do projects, any projects really from 25,000 upwards, how is it possible that we can give to the client a quote, right? And so, for a project, when you or I, the builder, don't know what the things are in that project that are going to need to be catered for. Now, if you're doing if you're on a Kachunka machine, in other words, you're doing, you've got the same 5 plans or 50 plans, and you build the same stuff over and over, this is not going to apply. What we're talking about here is renovations and custom homes. So essentially, the renovation and custom homes is it's going to require the same focus, okay? Because there's not 2 jobs or 2 renos that are the same. And a custom home is called a custom home for a reason, right? So everything that you do, you can't assume. You can make some probably really basic, assumptions as to what's going to be included. But really, there's not a lot. Anything with aesthetic value needs to be brought to us by the client, because it's not my damn house. It's your house. You've got to tell me what sort of countertops you want, what sort of laminate that you want, what kind of kitchen cabinet doors you want, all of that, right? So this is why, it can be frustrating. It's frustrating when I'm talking to my guy about this situation, because the client's saying that we are in the what I would call estimated price range part of this negotiation, whereby we don't have the information to give them a fixed price, and we do everything on fixed price. But to do that, we need the selection sheet filled out, which is what's got to be done by the client with our support and our collaboration, and we can help them with that. But ultimately, they've got to make the choice. Now, we are getting dismissed because the client is saying that our initial estimate, our price range, our estimated price range, is significantly higher than the other two builders that they've spoken to. And my guy has reiterated the point that, Mr. and Mrs. Client, we cannot possibly nail down a fixed price number without the specifications being determined. And yet they're telling us we have got to come down to be in line with these other builders to get a shot at winning that contract. It is ridiculously ludicrous. It drives me freaking batshit crazy. I don't understand why they don't understand it. However, therein lies the part of the challenge of being a general contractor. What you don't know, you don't know. These clients think that the differentiation in price is got to be 30% between what we've given them an estimate as far as a price range and the other builders. There's a massive difference between the two numbers. And of course, they're clinging on to the fact that they want this project to cost as least as possible. Who doesn't? But ultimately, you can't go and buy a Rolls Royce for a Kia price. It just doesn't happen. Now, we don't know. Here's what you don't know. The homeowner is going to assume that all builders know and build the same, which is the biggest load of horseshit under the sun. We don't know what their skill set is, or how do they do estimates, and what's their sales process, like what's their experience. Like, there's all kinds of X factors and anomalies that we have no control over and no understanding of. So this is why you've got to have your system, and that these clients buy in accordance with your selling system, that you don't sell in accordance with their buying system. Does that make sense? If you do that, that's going to be the tail wagging the dog, and you are going to live a life of construction misery, my friend. And that is something you've got to identify and you've got to change. So let's get on with, I got 4 points for you. There's 4 things that you're going to need to know to help you sell or quote a $500,000 or any reno, to be honest, like, any project. But this is what if you want to go big time and you want to sort of get into the $500 to $1.5 million renos, this is a good place to start. The first thing is you got to know how to estimate. If you can't build it in your head, you're going to really struggle with estimating the build process or creating the build process within. Oh, side note, if you're not using a job management software, you're going to go crazy. It's just, you've got to have something. I don't care whether it's Build Exact, whether it's Build a Trend, whether it's Co-Construct, whether it's something else, but you need something where everything happens under that umbrella. You've got to be able to handle your sales process, even maybe a minor CRM or customer relations management process. It's got to be able to do your estimates and your quoting, and it's got to do invoicing. It's got to do have some account capability that syncs with an accounting program for your accounting and reporting. But you've got to know how to build the thing, because if you don't, you're not going to. How can you put together, if you can't estimate a $50,000 or $70,000 kitchen project where you're going to need to talk to 15 to 20 trades on those sorts of projects, you shouldn't be looking at $500,000 renos, because you're going to screw yourself, I would say. Okay, so you need to have a very competent understanding. So I was in the game for about 20 years as a subcontract carpenter before I got my builder's license. I'd worked on everything from commercial high-rises to townhouse projects to building, high-density shitbox, like single detached dwellings, even to like 4,000 square foot, like turnkey operations on, large house lots where they had the whole things, the pergolas, the swimming pools, the full-blown landscaping, fencing, the whole 9 yards, right? So it was 20 years that I did all of that before I actually went and applied. Now, it took me 3 times to get my builder's license because I'm not an academic and I struggle with that. But what I'm getting at is that what I did in that first 20 years, and if you're a young fella or young gal and you just got into construction, and you're 23 and you're wondering why you're not dominating, you seriously need to you need to put some you need to apply some patience to your situation, because I'm 49, I'm freaking old, and it's why I'm sitting on this side of the camera talking about my experience, because you can't buy experience. Now, I think that you can learn something from the old boys like me. And you can save yourself a lot of heartache and pain. But the challenge for you is, because you're impatient, you don't want to listen to old boys like me. And I get that. And I was probably a little bit arrogant in that regard as well, and wanted to learn the hard way. And sometimes that's just the way it's got to be. So a lot of that previous experience, but if you can take away, and you can be a very good student of the business, in other words, pay attention. So this is something that I quickly chatted with our creative director. And I said, it's interesting, because I thought I got hard done by when I got an apprenticeship with a fella by the name of Philip Usher in Brisbane, and I was working for Phil as an apprentice carpenter, but he would literally send me off with Gary the bricklayer and Lenny the concreter, and he'd have me boxing up pools and driveways, and prepping the rebar, and I would do landscaping for weeks on end. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm not learning carpentry. The thing was, what was happening was I was getting exposed, and I didn't know this. This is Mr. Little Arrogant, first, second, third year carpenter wanting to call the shots. What I didn't understand was I was actually getting my black belt in a lot of the other trades, because I would interact. Now, I'm a little bit outgoing. I would think I'm more of an introvert, but on a building site and in the building game and dealing with clients, I really enjoy that process. So, I think that whilst that was all happening intuitively or subconsciously almost, I was just developing an understanding of the sequence of events within a project and how all of the different trades and suppliers interfaced and collaborated throughout the process. So that's the first point. You got to know how to estimate. You got to know who's who in the zoo and how they interact and how they interface, and if there's, collaboration, and that's going to help you when you're building in your, I'm going to assume you've got a piece of software. And what I do is, we build categories and we build items within categories, and within the items, within the categories, we're building recipes and assemblies. And so that can really expedite our process when it comes to creating, an initial price estimate for a client, but also confirming with a high level of accuracy the final set of specifications and the price that's associated with that specification list. So that's the first thing. You need to have that as an attribute, as a part of your expertise. You need to be able to sort of be confident that, I can, if I've got a $500,000 renovation, I can look at the building, I can go on Google, I can look at the roof structure. I know that how to peel back the roof. I understand, what I've got to do to make the site safe. I know what I've got to do to be able to deconstruct and demo. And can I do an addition to the back of the house for the foundations whilst I'm doing the existing, like all of this sort of stuff. You need to be able to live in virtual reality, my friend. You need to be able to literally build that in your head, watch it be deconstructed or get the demolition component take place, and then the reconstruction begin. You've got to be able to envisage that, and you've got to be able to see that with confidence so that you can then start to build your estimate in relation to that. Okay, so the second thing is you've got to have a network of designers, okay? So you need architects, you need geotechs, you need engineers, you need interior designers. You need to have those folks around you to support your ability to sell to the client, and also your ability to, be able to take those costs into consideration. So, if you've got an architect or a draftsperson that you use all the time, then you're gonna, and you've done a few projects maybe, but if you're just starting out, you're not gonna know what costs are associated around those 3 or 4 designers, right? So, for me, when I first come to this town, I was fortunate enough to have some of my wife's family that were involved in construction. So I would ring good old Pete, and I would say, Pete, who do you use as an engineer? Who do you use as, I think I started with an architect, because architects tend to know engineers, geotechs, interior designers, right? So start with the architect. And so I'd ring up, big shout out to Matt, who's the architect in town here that we do a little bit of business with. And then from that, I would just keep asking questions. So, Matt, who do you know who is which engineers or engineers, because you're going to need a couple maybe, that you'd recommend? And so I would start to network, and I didn't even know really what that word meant. I just knew that I needed to build business relationships with each of these designers to enable me to be able to sort of quote expeditiously, efficiently, and accurately, right? So that's going to take a lot of work. Now, side note, when you're going to, you've got to know your costings for those guys and gals as well, and you've also got to know how they interact. Like with an engineer, they're going to charge you $300 or $400 Canadian to go out and do a structural assessment. And then, of course, they might charge you upwards of $1,500 to do a structural design, depending on the size of the project. If it's a small addition, it's going to be less. If it's going to be a massive second-story addition with an addition out the back, your costs are going to go up. So you're going to need to be able to sort of understand what they do and why you need them, and then what the costs associated are going to be for their services. So this brings me to my next point. Point number 3, you've got to have a very organized RFQ process. Now, RFQ stands for Request for Quotation. You're going to need to have a very organized RFQ process, because I remember back in the dark ages, I would literally open up 20 emails, because you know that you've got to attach the same PDF plan to the email to send it to the plumber, the electrician, the carpenter, the concreter, the drywaller, the roofer, the Windows guy. Like, everyone needs a copy of these plans. So I'm literally just open. Now, with the software that we use, it enables us to do the RFQ, have an RFQ process that is easy to execute. It's also easy to track. And so the accountability process, as far as deadlines for quotes back, that is fairly well organized. Now, you as the operator, it's not a set and forget. You've actually got to go in there and maintain that RFQ system. And it means that, I don't know where you're doing business, but what I find is that our trades can be fairly tardy on producing RFQs for us, or quotes off the back of the RFQ, the request for quote. So you've got to have good relationships. And as much as we built, good networks with our designers, you also need to build networks within the subcontractor and supplier network within your ecosystem. Now, just a quick side note, I get a lot of my guys, interested in, hey, have we got buying power with James Hardie, or do we have buying power with Home Hardware or whatever? I want to encourage the little guys that you look for where your advantage is. Of course, if you've got multiple offices like we do here in Canada, there's going to be some knock-on benefit as far as pricing, and we haven't even really got started, because you're just going to have the volume. That's simple. But I want you to look at your situation, and really your advantage is your lack of overhead. You're not paying a bunch of people. You haven't got an office. Instead of having buying power, you're just keeping your fixed expenses very well under control and down. So, as it relates to talking suppliers, don't go in there and try and grind the shit out of them. They're just going to laugh you out the room. Go in there. No, side note, we're talking about, estimating, trying to calculate your markups, right? You're going to need to know your business numbers. You've got to be able to tell me in a moment that, what your business costs you to run, because that's going to then help you ascertain or confirm what your markup percentage needs to be for you to just keep the lights on. You've got to figure out what I call your break-even point is. So, don't go to the suppliers and go, I need a good deal on this. And I would encourage you to also take it easy on your subs. I was a sub for 2 decades, and it would just piss me off that people would expect me to subsidize their success by giving you a ridiculously cheap price. And I would then hate them because I would be working for no dough. So just be careful you don't undermine your own success. I used to, and of course, because I was quite a cantankerous, bad-tempered little contractor, which went against me often, I would tell these superintendents, I said, we make you look good, bro. Which was the truth. We did a really good job, and it really helped him with his, the client experience. So it wasn't that I wasn't off. It was probably the delivery which was savagely off. But at the end of the day, we've got to understand that, our relationships with our subs really assists us in being able to deliver an end result that is actually good for our business long term. And I need you to think long term, okay? Don't get hot-headed and go out there and try and grind suppliers and grind subs, because that's where you think you're going to make the money. What you're going to find is that you're going to become very unattractive to suppliers and subs, because they go, I just don't enjoy working for that guy. All he does is bust my balls about price all the time. I'd rather go and work for this guy. You've got to start thinking about, how do I become a preferred general contractor where subs and suppliers really enjoy doing business with you. Now, once you've got some credibility with said suppliers and subcontractors, I tell you what will happen is, especially right now, is they might actually be able to delay a price rise because you're such a good guy or gal. Think about that. This is why I'm saying think about the long game. You want to go and grind them, guess what? The first chance they get, here's an email, send this to Joe Blow Builder and let him know that our shit just went up 7% because he's such a dick, so I can't wait for him to read this email, right? Or alternatively, he's such a good dude to work for, let's postpone this price rise for 3 months. You've just made money because you're a good dude or you're a good dudette, right? So just think about that. So that's sort of, that's in combination with your RFQ process. You've got to have a way to communicate, to make your trades and your suppliers accountable. The fact that you've established deadlines and all that sort of thing. You've got to include all the data in the email. And as much as I say I open 20 emails and I put the set of plans in the old days, I attach that PDF to the plan. The content of the email was very different from trade to trade. Obviously, if you're going to give it out to 3 plumbers to quote, then obviously the verbiage can be the same. But if you're talking about plumbers, electricians, drywallers, tile setters, it's all going to be different, right? So it takes a shit ton of time, and this is why you need to use tools. Now, if you're a carpenter by trade, you don't cut shit with a freaking handsaw. You're going to use a skill saw. That's why we evolve. So why is it that we're using Excel spreadsheets instead of using proper software that actually cover all of our business operations instead of just the estimating part? Blows me away. But anyway, because tools actually have a leveraging capability that buys us back time. If I was going to cut a 2x10 with a handsaw and you were going to cut a 2x10 with a freaking skill saw, you'd cut 3 of them before I'd cut 1 or more, right? You see what I'm saying? So tools give you leverage, and when you leverage, you buy back time, and time is the most valuable asset, okay? That was something extra to think about. Right, organized RFQ process, and make sure you're dealing with your suppliers and your subcontractors in a mature, competent fashion, right? Okay, so the last thing you're going to need is to really help you quote a $500,000 reno is the selection sheet. And here is where it all starts for me. This is the biggest bugbear. How are you supposed to go down to the local, Ford Motor Company and order a pickup truck, and you don't tell them what color, what features, what drivetrain, blah, blah, blah. What are they going to ask you for straight away? What color do you want? Do you want four-wheel drive, two-wheel drive? Do you want crew cab? Do you want single cab? Do you want extra cab? Do you want a 6'6" box? Do you want an 8-foot box? Like all of that, do you want a four-wheel drive drivetrain? Like that's what we need to know as builders. Now, the classic is when you've got a client that wants a $500,000 reno, the funniest thing they ask me for is, oh, Max, so what's your square foot rate? $1,000 a square foot. Like, I don't know. Like, how can you can't use a square foot rate because there's zero predictability in every different reno. It just doesn't figure out. Now, if you've done a few renos, you might say, well, this is going to be a $350,000 to $500,000 reno. You can tell them that. But the square foot rate goes out the window. It might be $300 a square foot or more, maybe up to $350 for a new home right now. But that's because we're doing the same stuff over and over, and it's got an element of predictability, which helps us. When you start talking about a 2,000 square foot home that's going to have an addition, it's going to have a second story, it's going to have addition out the rear, and it's going to have a second story addition, and we're going to renovate 3 bathrooms in the existing home, and we're going to repaint the whole place inside, and a new roof. Like, you can't. There's no square foot. There's no assembly. There's no recipe that can short circuit the coming up with the final number. And so this is where I started. We have to, if we're going to do a custom project, i.e. a $5,000 reno or a custom home, it needs to be disassembled and broken down, and then it's got to be all then put together back into a proper quote, and the way we do that is a selection sheet. So however it is that you create a generic selection sheet for your client is up to you. Would I be able to use Excel spreadsheet for this? Probably. Now, we've got software that, as we go through and we do the estimate, we can click an allowance button. That means that we put it into an allowance list. We can modify that Word document, and that gives us the ability to then send off that list off the back of our estimate. So we're creating a shopping or a selection sheet as we build the estimate. So what we would do is we can't put any specifics. Let's talk about the kitchen faucet for example. We would just put in there main floor kitchen faucet. Like, that's all we can tell you. We can't tell you what color it is, what make, what model, what style, nothing. We can't. So that has got to go onto the allowance list until such time as they come back to us with okay, we want this model, this make, this style, this color. then we can actually change the verbiage within the estimate and actually make that a specified item so we can include it in the specifications. So it's not much, like it's easy for you to create a selection sheet. You've just got to come up with a bunch of generic terms for said project that then needs to go to the client. Now you can do that with Excel. You can do that, I'm sure you can do that in most job management or estimating softwares. But that you need to understand that process. You can't sell something you don't know anything about. So you've got to, now I'm talking about fixed price. I'm not talking about cost plus, although this 4 points is going to help you do a cost plus if that's what you want to do. The danger is what we're seeing currently is we're hanging our hat on a post $600,000 price, and the competition is saying it's between $350 and $400. So what do you think the client's thinking? Well, Max, why are you so expensive? Well, we're not. We're accurate. We're realistic. And what they're saying is, well, we can't get finance for $600,000. Well, that's not my problem. So you want a builder to start who tickles your ears with on a cost plus contract, who says, yeah, we can do it $350, $400. They get 3/4 of the way through the project. They've already taken $300,000 from the client. Now what? Builder's got to go to client with cap in hand and say, we're going to need another couple of $100,000. And then the client absolutely loses it because, like we just got told today, it's out of their ability to finance that post $600,000 project. So if builder B down the road tells them they can do it for $350, $400, and then comes back to the client 3/4 of the way through the project and needs another $150,000, the build's not going to get finished. The builder's not going to get paid, and the client's home is going to basically stay in a state of disrepair. It's all bad, folks. So even if you are doing cost plus, which I don't subscribe to, I think you can do better profit-wise from doing a fixed price. But even if you do cost plus, you better have an accurate way of really compiling what a realistic price is through items and components and categories and assemblies and things like that. Because using a square foot rate or some antiquated way of, doing an estimate for someone and you understand the difference between, I hope you understand the difference between a quote and an estimate. And you seriously need to Google that shit if you don't. But a quote is a fixed price. An estimate is a kind of ballpark, stand back from the dartboard and throw it. Like, it's got no reliability to it. It's an estimate. And so, I'm not going to get started on marketing messages, but guys and gals, I've been at this now for 25 minutes. I'm done. So you got to know how to estimate, point number one. Point number two, you got to have a network of designers who are reliable, that are going to give you accurate pricing indications. You've got to have an organized RFQ process, understand that grinding subs and suppliers is not the way to build relationships, quality relationships with those guys and gals long term. And you've got to understand how powerful a selection sheet it can be in your endeavor to give people, accurate pricing. My name's Max. I'm the CEO. Like, share, and subscribe. If you want to get a hold of me and you've got questions about this episode or anything else, max@businessforbuilders.ca. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Go build a kick-ass business. See you next time. Cheers.